Hey everyone, Nick from Print Profit. You're going to love this episode. We sit down with a young game changer in the printing industry who goes by the name of Russ Alexeev. He's the founder of Diskko, which is a one-stop shop for custom apparel and merchandise solutions. So he and his team are empowering some of the biggest brands, creatives, and influencers in the world for all things design, print production, all the way down to fulfillment logistics. We pick apart Russ's upbringing with parents who came to the United States from Russia and the Ukraine, his love for skateboarding and building community, and what it was like starting a business as a teenager, which was Diskko, that would go from a clothing brand and morph into what it is today. What did that scale look like? How critical was learning the skills of delegation? What's his secret sauce when it comes to hiring new talent with fresh perspectives? Then we get into the current state of his business. He just acquired his first ever business, and we look at how has that umbrella of companies within Diskko grown from when he first started it. And then we look into the future. What is his insight on where the printing industry is headed along with his own business? I know you're going to love this episode. Thanks for taking time out of your day to be here. Appreciate you. Russ, this is Print Profit Podcast numero uno, number
Awesome.
one.
Wow. It's an honor.
I know you've been on different podcasts, but probably not the first one. So you're the brave soul who said yes first.
Awesome. Yeah, that's an honor. It's awesome to be on the podcast. And honestly, like watching what you've been doing and building recently has been super cool. So it's obviously a pleasure to be on. I appreciate you having me.
Definitely. I'm so early in my entrepreneurial journey. When we first had a chance to connect, when you reached out after a Printavo podcast that I did, I was super inspired by your background, and we have a lot of similarities. So, you know, early teenager, skateboarding was a big deal for you. I grew up skateboarding BMX, and that influenced a lot like graphic design. And I just really dove into that. I don't know if you remember like the CCS catalogs,
Oh, wow.
like when that hit the mailbox, diving into the
Yeah.
t-shirts and the shoes and the skate deck designs, or like World Industries for me was always so cool, the artwork that they had.
You
So
just unlocked a very deep memory. Oh, like I had to dig deep for that one. Yeah.
what's cool for you from what I've learned, and even for listeners of this podcast, Russ and I have connected for a few times. What I'm looking forward to in this conversation is highlighting your journey, but also even for me, learning more about your past. So, what's cool from what I've learned is that early influence of skateboarding, but also a means to build community, bring people together. You tie that in with fashion. Do you want to explain to everyone how that came to be what is today Diskko, you know?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, I appreciate you doing the research. I could tell you did the research and got the background right. Yeah, I mean, I was like 12, 13, something like that, and got into BMX first. And I was always like a super skinny kid, so I couldn't pick the bike up to do like tricks and jumps and stuff. So I was like, F this, I'm gonna try skateboarding. So I started skateboarding and I was spending like every single day after school at the skate park. Like any free time I had, I was at the skate park. That's where I made a lot of my friends, like that's where I met like everyone that, I'm like closer with today. That's where I met my buddy who was a graphic designer at the time. And me and design, we don't go together at all. I know nothing about design. I can't design nothing about graphic art or any illustration or anything like that. And so um, I've always had like a passion for entrepreneurship or for leadership. I don't know where it comes from. I think it comes from like seeing my parents. They came over here from Ukraine and Russia. My mom from Ukraine, my dad from Russia, um, with like nothing, with not a lot, obviously, and they had to um, couch surf and kind of find their people here within the U.S. and um, So they were always working. They were super, super hard workers, and I think that I kind of get that like work ethic from them, and so I kind of translated that into leadership and like everything I did, right? So I was at the skate park so often, and I was like, how do I like build community? How do I do something here? How do I kind of, you know, um create some kind of like good out of this community? And so we started like a little skate group. Like it was just a couple of us kids. We would get together, we would film ourselves skate at the skate park, and then we'd burn copies of ourselves skating onto like DVDs. I guess my parents had like a DVD, and what's so crazy is I actually just looked over and I saw this, which is like what we used to burn the
That's
DVDs.
yep.
Yeah, which I don't know what that's doing over here in the back of this desk, but I'm at my parents' house right now. Um, so yeah, and we used to like burn videos of ourselves skating onto these DVD discs and try to sell them at fairs and sell them online and stuff. Just kind of like start a business out of it, I guess, and it slowly transitioned to t-shirts and merch. So then Hunter, my buddy who started Disco with me, we started kind of like selling t-shirts and merch, turned into a clothing brand. So then we started kind of taking historical themes and concepts and kind of like remodeling them through, I guess, like a skater's perspective and this modern like streetwear style perspective. And then we were doing that for a couple of years, and COVID came around, and we started trying to work with like influencers and artists and stuff to kind of promote our clothing brand. But instead of other people buying our clothes, what happened was the influencers would come back to us and be like, "Hey, where do you guys get your stuff made? Because it's so cool, and we want to launch merch brands and stuff." And um, at that point, kind of pivoted our business, pivoted the logistics, and started, doing custom apparel and merch and supply chain logistics for, your influencers, artists going on tour, creatives, brands, all that. That's kind of like the story, the history in a nutshell.
And I know you said in past podcasts that was a fundamental game changer. Instead of you hustling, trying to sell, having people come to you, that was a big change for the business. And that was probably an aha moment of, okay, how do we pivot this to serve those creatives, those other entrepreneurs, brands, influencers, you know?
Yeah, right, because you're going to like technically from a DTC e-com model to a B2B, like a true B2B model. Because like at the end of the day, I'm not selling to Logan Paul, for example, I'm selling to his team. His team's a business. It's a business. So it's going from understanding DTC e-commerce and all the marketing flows and sales strategies that go into direct to consumer business, which like as a clothing brand, I mean, I was 15, 16, 17. We weren't making money, right? We were
Yeah.
selling a couple t-shirts on the weekend if we got lucky. Um, and then, started to learn the business behind it, and it started growing, growing, growing. In 2018, 2019, started having conversations with retail. I mean, we had meetings with Zoomies, and then, yeah, pivoting from like that direct to consumer model to like B2B, which is, it was a big change. Yeah.
What's inspiring to me is how young you are. And we have a similarity where at 16, I found out all about the printing industry. I said, I love this. This is my passion. I know we have sort of different paths, but at a young age, you found a passion, you took it and went all in. So as some a different kind of part of that journey, I want to transition from high school on. I'm going to say these names and see if you know what I'm talking about, what they have in common. Donald Trump, Denzel Washington, Lana Del Rey, and David Copperfield. Do you know the connection between those famous people?
No, you're gonna have to tell me. You're gonna have to help me out with this one.
They all went to your college.
Oh, no way. You know what? I was thinking of saying that, and I was like, Donald Trump didn't go to Fordham. I didn't know that. Did you go to Fordham Law?
I Googled it and he attended for 2 years and then went to like
Uh,
University of Penn or something.
See, that was my first thought too when I heard Lana Del Rey and Denzel Washington. But no, I didn't put that together. That's funny.
So to try to, young teenager, high school, found something cool, but to then
manage that and try to grow it while also being at college. And I found from your alma mater's website, like you were a top 100 person. And in addition to being a student, maybe trying to have a social life, running Diskko. I read that you were involved with the Resident Hall Association, a dance marathon, whatever that is, fraternity, fintech network, finance society. Like, I thought I was jam packed in college, but you, sir, are insane.
Yeah, I mean, um, I gotta give the credit to my parents for that one. They kept me busy as a kid. So like, kind of backtracking, they came over here, right? Had to work hard, and that's where I kind of learned all that stuff from. But I gotta give them credit because like they kind of instilled that. They always kept me busy in a good way. Like there was always like I was learning piano. I was attending Sunday school. I was doing martial arts all my life growing up. So yeah, so I got to give them credit for kind of keeping that and instilling that like busy work ethic, go-getter nature in me. Um, and I felt like even when went off to college and was, on my own, I guess, and like living alone and having roommates and not having to report to my parents every day, I kept going with that. I had to keep myself busy. That's the type of guy I am. And I know you're similar, right? You're the same. You got to be busy. You got to keep doing something. I know that we connected on that previously too. Yeah, it was the same and obviously difficult to manage time. And, I could definitely say it was not easy, but it was almost at the same time like second nature to me, just because it's
That's all
just
you
kind of how
know.
I grew up. Yeah.
Were you surprised that Disco continued all throughout college or not at all?
You know what? When it was a clothing brand and we were producing our own clothes and trying to sell them online, I knew that there would be an end to that. I knew that and this is like Fordham always invites me back to give presentations and speeches to other students and to the classes. I always knew that I was failing, right? Like I always knew that something wasn't working the way it was currently working, I guess. And so I always knew that there was like a next step, but I never gave up. Like I never gave up. I never dropped it. I never said like, maybe I should be done with this now. I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And like, I guess for that reason, I'm not surprised that I'm still, running the business. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of like being persistent and just keeping like I always believed and honestly more than even belief and more than like persistence or hard work or dedication, it was the desire to like want to create something. I'm a very results oriented person, and so like I knew the more work I put into something, the more results I would see, and that's what kept me going. That's what kept me kind of pushing through college and wanting to do this full time after I got out of college.
And the space that you found yourself in, so really jumping to present, and I'm looking off at my notes here because I like the way that on your website or LinkedIn page about Disco, right? Making it easy for creators, brands, influencers to spread their message by offering full service custom apparel solutions. It's been fascinating over the years to see how social media has really brought life to influencers, small, medium, large, and just the power of that. And you even see the trends where the influencers are now pushing their own products and having skin in the game, um, versus just maybe taking one time payout to do certain posts and not having equity share. So that trend, that I don't want to say trend, it's here, but that space that you're in, do you think that you got in early to serving those types of people in this way? And I know right now there's a lot of people doing something similar. So how have you seen that space evolve and even Disco within it to keep up?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that I think about a lot. I by no means think we got in early. I think we were very late. But at the same time, like how much earlier could I have been because I was so young? But I mean, it's an interesting space, especially like what we do, like the merchandise, custom apparel services. It's so niche, like it's so weird and random when I tell other people, they're like, That's weird. Because like you don't hear about it a lot, but we do have a lot of competition. It's a very competitive space. I mean, you're learning things every single day in this space, in this world. You're learning the effects of technology. Like you have your printifies and printfuls where it's all on demand. And that's, I think it's going to take over. Like I think that's what's next is once Amazon and I mean they're already starting to figure it out, but once these big companies can start to figure out how to reduce ship times and like that turnaround process, um, and kind of spend less money on inventory, and they're starting to catch on and starting to figure that out. The quicker they figure that out, the quicker businesses like us get killed. But at the same time, what I found that kind of keeps businesses like us around is the ability to be that one-stop shop. Because, you know, when you start to invest so much in technology and bringing on ways to decrease your turnaround times or increase customizability, for example, you start to like you start to lose other parts of the business because you can't do everything all at once, if that makes sense. Like it's so difficult to explain, but you
Yeah.
can't offer all these services all at once. It's just not possible. It's not sustainable for business. And I think that like when your Printifies and Printfuls and all these big print on demand companies and all these merch conglomerates try to um focus on one piece, they miss the rest, and it's all on purpose, right? Like they don't care that they're missing this little piece of their business or that little piece of their service offering. They don't care. They're dropping that off for a reason because it's no longer turning profit for them. That's why that's our opportunity to pick up those pieces, I think. So I don't know, it's interesting, and it's just as interesting to attend these conferences and these events. And I'm sure you've heard of ISS and PPAI and ASI and all these conventions, and you hear different things every year. You learn something new every year. You meet someone new every year. But one thing I've noticed, and you tell me if you've kind of seen the same trend, but I attend these events every year and everyone gets older. And it's like you don't see a lot of young people in the print space. I don't know um about like other parts of the print industry, but like all your screen print shop owners, they're all older, right? All of your contract print network owners, they're all older. I'm wondering like what this space and what this environment's going to look like in 10 years. Obviously, I think newer, fresher, younger perspectives are coming in, but it is interesting because I think we're seeing this industry change right in front of our eyes. And like, I'm not in the place to tell you where this is going to go next because like my parents didn't grow up in this industry. They know nothing about it.
Yeah. I've seen same observations as you all around the world. No matter what part of the industry, young seems to be late 40s in the printing industry,
Yeah.
and so much opportunity. And if anything, technology is forcing that society, consumer demand. Um, and also, I just see it rich with that opportunity to help move it forward. And that's why it's so cool to connect with different younger owners doing different things in the space. So, yeah, you're spot on with that observation.
Yeah. It's been interesting to see, I think. And like it's a good question, and like you going back to your original question, I feel like I don't even have an answer to it just because like I'm watching everything change. And truthfully, I don't know where I'm gonna be in 2, 4, 5, 6, 10 years. Um, yeah, I mean, hopefully there's positive business growth. I mean, we've seen it in the past couple of years. We've seen it just in this year alone. I mean, we're blowing out all of our other years, revenue wise, but it is interesting to see what changes. And I think like just to kind of throw in another little loop here, I mean you have all these like a huge part of our service offering and who our clientele is artists, right? These artists are going on tour. They've got e-commerce sites hooked up to their Spotify's and Apple Music's and Instagram pages and stuff, but we're competing with Live Nation. And I don't know if Live Nation is still with Ticketmaster and, like what's going to happen with that. It's probably news I should be watching. But I mean, Live Nation owns one of the largest merch companies in the world. They essentially do the same thing as us. And so, you know, they're getting the Mariah Careys and the Drakes and, you know, whoever, whatever. But yeah, that's what's interesting about this space is like you never know what's next. You never know who's working with who, and there's a lot of opportunity for um, little pieces to fall into your hand.
And as I'm sure you've seen, a big part of it is relationship. And yes, through those big platforms, all roads could lead to, you know, a certain way to have merch and apparel. But also, there's something about that relationship and really understanding them strategically and different ways you can add value. So we know there's a lot of different angles and complexities to it, but there's something to be said about that. And I know that's been a part of your success as well, relating to that journey, relating to that artist, that brand. You come from that space, and have a lot of value and expertise.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. We just had 3 new hires start this week on Monday. The first thing I told each of them was relationships is everything in this business. Like building a relationship with your customer is everything. They will follow you from merch company to merch company to merch company as long as you're that guy who can match them on their level. That's like the difficult part with working with influencers and artists and stuff. You can never ask them to come up to meet you or come down to meet you at your level. You got to go meet them at their level. Whether that means changing your communication style, being flexible with your communication style, like it's everything, and that's what we've learned. And like all of the successful folks in this print industry are successful because of the relationships they've built over the years, or maybe the relationships their parents have built over the years, and they've kind of taken over their business. That's kind of the trend I've been catching on to.
yeah. When in your journey did you start to bring print in-house?
So we don't print anything in-house. We like I'm not sitting there printing, you know, t-shirts or anything like that. We're not doing anything in-house. We've always like thought about it, and that was always like the dream in my head. But then I was like, why spend money on all this, you know, on I guess you'd call it capex, right? Like in your terms,
Yep.
why spend money on machinery, on insurance, on employees, on all that stuff when I could work right here from my parents' house on a Thursday, right? Like why spend money on upfront on capital when on inventory, on you know, all that stuff when you can work, you know, online and kind of be like a middleman business. Like I'm not afraid to say we're a middleman business. That's what we do, right? Like influencer comes to us and they need merch made. We're going to get it somewhere else at a contract decorator or printer somewhere in the US. But that's also what gives us the most flexibility to build those relationships, right? Like to match that customer on their level. We can do whatever that customer wants because we just find a way to outsource it. We build the logistics and the supply chain around them. For example, if a customer in Australia needs 20,000 t-shirts printed and distributed to Barnes and Nobles across the US, we can do that. Like because it's all available. It's all possible to do that online, and that's kind of what we find ourselves um doing on a on a day-to-day basis.
It's a fascinating thought, and I've had it as well. Different random business ideas, and to your point, you don't need to put the six, seven figures necessarily in that huge infrastructure, and you're still in the industry, and that it just leads to so much creativity in the business models.
Yeah. And I think like that also when you think about like influencers and creators and making this easier for them, being that one-stop shop is what makes it so simple. Like when we were a clothing brand and people were first coming to us, like influencers, models, brands, celebrities, whatever, um, they'd all say like, where do you guys get your designs from? And then we'd like send them our references for designers who we have in our network. And then they're like, all right, cool. We got our designs done. Where do you guys produce this stuff? So then we'd send them our references for like where we produced, you know, if you want hats, go to this factory. If you want t-shirts, go to that factory. And then they come back and they're like, all right, now we're ready to sell this. But we don't want to sit there and package all this stuff and sell it. So then I'd be like, okay, well, there's this guy in Florida, that guy in New York. And then I'm like, holy shit, we have this network of all these decorators and suppliers and stuff. We could be doing all this for them. I could be that one representative who can match that customer on their level make sure they get their designs, make sure they get their hats developed and produced, and make sure they get to their customers. And we could set all that up. Once we build out that supply chain once, we could replicate and, take influencers and put them on top of that existing supply chain to make hats, t-shirts, underwear, a pinball machine that we did a couple months ago. Like, you name it, we can do it. And that's just what makes, I think, this business interesting and always kind of keeps you on your feet.
What's been critical in order to scale? So you have that end-to-end network, right? But as business grows, take on more and more clients, I got to imagine the technology play to efficiently take that demand in and just get the work in the right places to the right. I mean, that's what's been the biggest gain in Disco's ability to scale over the years.
Also a really good question, and I think something that I still struggle with transparently. It's like it's exactly that. It's like how to scale. Where do you start when thinking about growing and scaling? How do you manage and allocate your resources efficiently? And I think that that's the biggest key right there. It's not like, I guess a lot of people think about like scaling as, oh, I have to figure out what to do with my money, right? Like I have to figure out how to spend my money correctly. But it's actually, how do you manage time correctly? So one of like, I literally just went through this like maybe last week, 2 weeks ago, is I have very talented people on my team. But there's no reason why someone with talent, with a bachelor's in, apparel sourcing and production development, and who understands how to manage apparel, there's no reason why that person should be spending their time on like customer service tasks, or um, maybe helping me with, like something on the website design side. So it's really like taking a look at all your resources, and everything's a resource. Your inbox is a resource. All the CRMs and sales tools you have, they're all resources. And how do you kind of map people and delegate and, um, I guess, allocate those resources to certain tasks efficiently? So yeah, for like a large part of scaling and growing for me has been the ability to delegate, but the ability to do so efficiently is to think about like who can do what and be efficient in what. Yeah, and I think obviously finding candidates is hard. Like I think typically what being home for a year after COVID has done to people is make them not want to work as hard, right? People now value um time, right? Like people value. I think like there was a study done, and I don't know the numbers exactly or who exactly did the study or what was studied, but I think there's a larger percentage of folks now who would take like a lower paying job or just a lower salary in general with less benefits, to be able to spend more time with family at home, doing things like golfing, doing things they love. So I know it was a going off track here with the answer to your question, but I think like scaling for us has been the ability to delegate and bring more people on board. Just bring more eyes, bring more ears, bring more talent on board has really been game changing for us.
You hit, I mean, we talked about aging workforce in the industry, and what I've seen all around the world, one of the biggest challenges is getting labor.
Yeah.
Um, I find that when I meet people who get into the printing industry who don't have the background, they're often vulnerable, understandably so, getting into a new industry. I see it as the biggest blessing. You're not coming in with preconceived notions, blinders. The amount of creativity and different thinking which is needed, I think, is a big asset. So, I mean, as you've grown your team and the same challenge of getting the right people in the right seats, uh, it sounds like they're coming from all different backgrounds. Have you had a certain strategy of people out of school or from a different discipline, or has it just been all the above? Any secret from your journey that maybe others can learn from?
I love bringing on young talent 100%. Like that's where I start. I take a lot of advantage of our existing like alumni network at Fordham. Just like Fordham in general, they bring me back so often, and we get interns from them like every semester almost, from
Awesome.
different classes. So like we're partnered with their classes. it's by no means a way for us to get inexpensive labor or inexpensive talent. Um, and the reason I say that is because it's actually a lot harder to hire young. I think way harder. When you hire someone with no experience in this industry, no work experience already, it's a lot harder. And that's because you have to put in the time to train, you have to put in the time to um, um, I guess just provide that experience and like provide those resources. So a lot of my time is actually spent like coming up with projects for interns, right? Coming up, with and like onboarding interns onto projects, right? But the reason I love it so much and the reason I'm not going to stop doing it is because I feel like I learn and am able to kind of grow better when I'm learning with the intern, if that makes sense. Like a lot of what I do still, because I'm only 24, like I'm still exploring and still learning every single day. Um, and when I feel like when I'm explaining something to someone else, I feel like I'm learning it again, and it kind of like solidifies it in my mind. I also feel like when folks who don't have experience in the industry or are not an quote unquote experienced hire are asking questions, I'm like, oh shit, that is a good question. Why do we do it that way and not this other way? Whereas people who come in like already have, like you mentioned, that like that knowledge, that experience, that's kind of like, so it's a learning experience for myself as well. And I think like that's what makes it so special and also gives us the ability to connect with our clients, right? It's not like a 50-year-old guy who's been doing this for, 20 years. I mean, I'm not trying to, you know what I'm trying to get at. It's a young, fresh perspective that understands social media, that understands why creators do what they do, that understands that not every creator is successful as they look, someone with 1 million followers that, it doesn't mean you have $1 million, right? Like it's understanding that concept. It's understanding how to relate to that influencer's audience and the ability to like change your communication style like that is what's so important. And I feel like you see that a lot in um, folks that are fresh out of school or still in school.
It seems like the space you're in moves really fast
Super.
and is not going to slow down. And I'm sure your customers push Diskko to continually evolve. You're also, you know, pushing the limits and offering them new things. The new hires, um, I'm sure, add a lot of perspective and push you as well of why have we done it this way and not that way. So all of those forces, it sounds just really exciting because it's not standstill, um, and you're gonna get run over and left in the dust if you stay that way. But it just feels young, fresh, moving fast, sprinting.
Yeah, yeah. And listen, like people who are willing to put in the work are super talented, like super, super talented. Um, and I think like sometimes all it takes is an opportunity to like find that talent within yourself. And that's like what I tell all like new interns or very young hires that we find, graphic designers, for example. There are so many talented people out there. There's so many people who just need an opportunity to like find what their talent even is, like find what they even enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And I notice a lot of the time, like when we host our internship program or the way we used to do it, it used to be like a very general open internship program. You come in as a candidate, for example, like you're an intern. I would say, all right, forget your major, forget everything you learned in school. What do you want to do when you grow up? Like, what do you want to do? Like someone, like I had an intern come in once and he was like, I want to be a farmer. I want to work on a farm. And that's when I knew that like, okay, a sales role might not like a sales role at Disco might not be for you. Maybe, but let's think about that. Like, what do you enjoy about farming? And he's like, I don't know. I just enjoy the process. Like, I enjoy the logistics. I enjoy trying to figure out how much, inventory I need in crops or like whatever. I forget what he was saying. Like, how much I need to spend on my machinery to get this output. Like, that's what I enjoy. And I was like, all right, forget your role, forget you applied for sales intern. We're going to put you in this position here where you're going to help us manage inventory. You're going to help us manage how many screen print presses we have available at that shop versus this shop versus that shop. So we know how to prioritize our order flow and how to return customers' orders quicker. He loved it and he was a killer at it. Like so good at it. So like that's why we do it. Like that's what makes me so happy and like keeps me going and like driven every day, honestly.
And that's something about the printing industry that is incredible to me. It's the amount of opportunity based off of what your passions and skill sets are. Technical, sales, management, operations, supply chain, on and on and on. A printing company needs that. And that's where I'm biased, we're biased, love this industry, but there's so much opportunity. Like you said, what are those person's dreams, skill sets, and you can purpose that to make an impact in print.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
Let's
when you like go around and talk to print shop owners, like, do you ever find that um even like print shop employees, like I don't know if you get a chance to talk to them, but do you ever find that like shops are heavily mismanaged, like from an operational standpoint? Like I feel like that's one of the reasons that prevents revenue growth in a lot of like print shops or print businesses is like a mismanaged shop. Is that true? Like is
Yeah, I've had a chance. One of the coolest thing working for the companies that manufacture the equipment in our industry, the printing presses, is the opportunity to go into 100 plus shops and see how they operate, how they think. Um, and yeah, the people part of that component of success in a company is critical. And I think often the lowest hanging fruit opportunity to to get more performance out of a company. I love the meme. I saw it for the first time not too long ago. Something about overstressed, overworked employees about to leave, and management. Oh, we've got the solution, and it's like 10 pizzas in the break room. I mean, there's so much just old school thinking. Going back to your point of people's holistic needs in 2024, and how do you position them to be in the right seat in a company to thrive and have an impact, because everyone in the company does. But I'm with you, the culture aspect, it's often the most tricky, but that is the secret sauce to so many companies that money can't necessarily buy. You could acquire them, but if you've got that component down in your company, it's amazing what can happen. You know it.
yeah. Yeah, that's how I always was. Like every job I had, I was like, if I don't have the opportunity to put like to talk, right, to speak up, to put my own input into this, but if I also don't have the opportunity to come into an organized workflow, or at least the workflow that I have the opportunity to help organize, right, like then I never felt happy. Like I never felt happy at a job where I came in, I was told what to do, and I had to follow that process and follow that procedure. I don't know. That's just the person I am. I don't know if that came off not the way I meant it to, but it's just the guy I am. Like I just love to speak up and um say how I think things should be done, even if it's wrong, and then like tell me if I'm wrong and show me why, and that'll be the best learning experience that I could get it, you know.
And that can be healthy conversation
Yeah, absolutely. It always is.
and should be applauded, but that's not necessarily the case in certain places. You're obviously an entrepreneur, it's in your blood. You want to share a bit of how the Disco umbrella has evolved over the years. And you had mentioned not long ago in a recent conversation, you did your first acquisition. I mean, that's not, I mean, first off, congrats, but
Thank
let's
you.
talk a bit about that part of growth and the journey.
Yeah, there's been a lot of like falling up, falling down, uh, meaning like a lot of thoughts throughout this journey of, do we find partners? Do we find people to get involved in this business who bring industry experience, who are maybe doing something similar, and we come in and kind of bring their perspective, their customer list, their techniques, and join them with ours. When we first started, the business was called Threads Manufacturing. That was like the business. That's how we started. Disco was the clothing brand, Threads Manufacturing was this apparel, manufacturing business, I guess, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Um, the decision was made to like transition and keep that Disco name just because like that's what it started as. Like it just, just wanted to kind of keep it there. But we kept Threads Manufacturing as kind of like a sister company, a sister business, and at one point they kind of did two separate things. Threads Manufacturing was a business that built e-commerce brands for um, creators. Like that's what we did, and that's kind of where we got our start. And then Disco, at the time, we were actually doing like small jobs for like small businesses, like schools. We were doing like campus Greek life merch and stuff like that. So there was like a concrete like split and like a wall between the two companies that would never intersect, and that was the ability that Threads Manufacturing had to build online e-commerce businesses. Like we learned Shopify, we learned distribution, fulfillment, the legalities and everything involved in that. And then that became more profitable than Disco. And then we were like, all right, well, let's analyze what's profitable about Threads Manufacturing, what's profitable about Disco, and let's try to kind of like put that puzzle piece together, like put those two puzzle pieces together to make one business that'll service the needs of both markets, but at a higher scale. So instead of working with like campus clubs and organizations, then we were like, all right, let's bid on contracts to work with schools, universities. Like, let's get that to that next level because we can utilize the e-commerce fulfillment, the 3PL network, the fulfillment like side of Threads and kind of attach it to Disco, right? So like that's kind of how we built it and put it all together and packaged and started working with like mid to high volume clients and ditched all the local mom and pop, gas stations and restaurants and all that merch that never made us money. Um, and kind of scaled in that and noticed that there was a market for us in like print on demand and a way for us to target those small clients without having to, because like we're a middleman business, like transparently our margins are super low, like that's just the nature of this business, very low margins, so you need volume to drive revenue, like volume drives revenue in this print game. So we were like, okay, it's either we need a high volume of orders, meaning we need 1,000 orders a day to be able to make money as a company, or we need that one order that's 1,000 units or whatever it is, and that's what's going to make us the money. So with Disco, we decided let's focus on high volume, like high volume orders, like a low volume of high volume orders, like those high ticket orders with those big ticket clients. And then let's find a way to kind of like pick up that, low volume but high volume flow. And high volume flow, like where that excels is e-commerce. That's your direct to consumer. So we wanted to get into the prints, like keep that print space and help those clothing brands and small restaurants and small businesses and stuff um, by offering like clothing services, but it would need to be automated because it's so high volume and so low margin. It has to be automated. It has to be tech heavy. And so that's what we did. We actually built the whole business out. And essentially what it is you go online, you pick from whatever garment you want, whether it's a t-shirt, a hoodie, like we have a bunch of different offerings. You upload your artwork and it prints and ships to you within 48 hours. So time is that key. Like time is that differentiating factor that made us different. There was a competitor in our space who, like, transparently, we modeled the business after just because I thought we could do it better. I thought like we had the network and the people to be able to do it better. Um, and I mean, we had conversations with them, and I was like, listen, like we're like transparently, we're friends. I'm good friends with them. I was like, we're friends, we're buddies, we're entering this space to compete because I know we have a market for it. Like, I want you guys to be able to do your thing. I want us to be able to do our thing. There's enough money to be made for the both of us in this industry. Like, let's stay apart and let's run this. Um, and we talked and talked and talked, and then they were kind of like, you know what? Like, you guys are probably better fit to run this business. Are you interested in a purchase? And I actually came to them like with that. I was like, are you guys interested in maybe doing something together, or maybe interesting in in selling, and they were, and just kind of came together, like all the stars aligned. And in December of 2023, we acquired that business from them. It's called the $40 Tee. Our market is like, your streetwear brands, and we get a lot of like podcasts. We get a lot of influencers just looking for like one-off quick prints, and that's what that business is for. It's a direct-to-consumer e-commerce model. So we're doing a lot of like Instagram marketing, email marketing, SMS marketing, email retention marketing, abandoned cart flows, all that good stuff. And it's two completely separate businesses in all aspects, but it's that it's that umbrella. It's building that umbrella in this print game, and it's been fun.
And diversifying sounds interesting.
Diversifying. Yeah.
That acquisition process, did you think in your head, man, this sounds overwhelming, I've never done it? Did it prove to be complicated, or was it rather simple?
It was rather simple, and that's a big thanks to the guys over at Superline Network. They're who we purchased it from. They're a big media network in our print space, but they focus on apparel. Yeah, they were super easy to work with throughout the whole process. We thought it was going to be more difficult than it was, but it's because $40 T to them was an asset under Superline Network. It wasn't a separate business, and so like it technically was just an asset purchase agreement. Like that's it was like we purchased the assets from them, and then we built the business. Like we incorporated $40 T and kind of plugged their assets into our business. So instead of purchasing a business under a business portfolio, which would have been more complicated legally, it was asset purchase, and that's what made it so simple too. And um, you know, yeah, they've been super helpful throughout the process. We still work with them. We run ads through them. Like we do a lot of good work together. And I think like in this print space, another thing I'll add is the fact that I truly believe that what's going to happen next, especially in apparel, is you're going to see a very, very big um, you're going to see growth among the big competitors who work together. Like, I do think it takes working together. I think the farther you try to push yourself from those who are succeeding in this space, the farther away you get from that success. And like, we've been making an effort to work very, very closely, even with competitors, to stay close with competitors, just to understand what's happening in this space, to understand who's talking, who's working with one another. It's a very small world, as I'm sure you already know. I go out to LA, a couple times every year, and every time I'm there, it's like, oh shit, you're Russ, you're that guy. This person at that company told me about you, and I'm like, oh, I just saw him yesterday. And it's such a small world. You get to meet people, you get to work with one another. It's yeah,
What you just mentioned, I got back from Germany last week and I went to call it the world's largest trade show for the printing industry. Happens every 4 years. It's called Drupa in Dusseldorf, Germany. And over 176 countries were represented there, shy of 200,000 people, all facets of the printing industry. And one of the biggest takeaways I had from that show, with all the innovations, announcements, it was the partnerships.
yeah,
I'm only 33, young guy in this industry, but I've never seen that level of, before it was competition, elbows out, and now it's like, how can 1 + 1 = 3? And we work together, and that's a game changer. And you're seeing it with your business as well.
yeah. It's so interesting. I honestly, um, it is a very like tough industry because relationships go foul like that. Um, but I think like what you'll notice is that the good, honest people stick around, and they stick around for a while. Like I was just in Florida, um, with one of our like largest shops in our network. They're like one of, I mean, they print for any sporting event, UFC, Formula One, NBA, NFL, like you name it, they're the guys. Um, we went out to lunch, and the question came up like, oh, what other printers in the network do you work with? and I'm like, oh, like there's this one guy out in Long Island. Um, and well, why am I blanking on his name? I want to give him the credit. I want to shout him out, but oh, Pete Jr. They're like,
Pete,
oh, we know this one guy out there, Pete Jr. And I'm like, Pete's the man. Like Pete hooks it up every time. He's quick. He's super good. And they were like, yep, he's one of those honest guys that's been around for, almost a decade now or whatever it is, maybe more. And he's like one of those guys where he's honest, he's there for you, he's around, he's like customer service is key, and like that's what keeps him around and in this space. And when shops like that big shop that does the NBA, NFL stuff, when they get super busy, they know who to outsource to. Like they know who to send their orders to. And that's where like this business is so interesting is like the guys who stick around and are around for a while are some of the most genuine, honest people I have ever met. Like truly some of the hardest working. Like I can't say good things about them. Like another shout out is if you've ever heard of the Board of Decorators. It's basically like this it's like this non-accredited, like not like nothing crazy, just this board of like five decorators. They release industry statistics and news and things like that all the time. And there's one guy on the board. He also owns a big print shop in Orange County, California. His name's Blake Reed. And he's the man. Like that's a guy you can go to for anything and everything, and there will be an answer no matter how difficult for him to get that answer. And like that's what really is like super super special about especially like the apparel space is like there are some good people in this space, and you know it's
it's
been
all
really
about
fun working
people.
with
At the end of
it,
the day, people doing business
people.
with people.
Yeah.
We've done past, present. Um, Before we wrap up, and I want to ask some questions about the future, a big part that's helped me in my career is mentorship. It's been critical, right? You have organic friends, family, people within the industry. I'd like to learn from you. You're still 24 years old, you've accomplished a lot. Other than your parents, we know they've been instrumental in support. Where do you go when you're looking for sound advice and support, trying to tackle some tough challenges?
Yeah, that's a good question. As like a first generation in this space, it's been really tough because like you really have to go out there and network and make those connections. But networking, especially in the print space, is difficult, right? Because like it's not easy to pick up the phone and be like, "Hey, I need advice on this." People are busy. Like people aren't like that. People don't want to pick up the phone and stuff. It's expensive to network. You got to go out and you got to attend these events and these conventions and stuff. But I've been lucky to meet a lot of very like influential to me people in this space. Some of them are younger than me, honestly. Some of them are the same age. Like not everyone is much older than me. And it's really just been like the ability and the I guess like understanding the importance of networking, and like that's what's that like I've met some of, like I said, the most influential people to me like through just putting myself out there. And like the one piece of advice I always give everyone when people are like, I can't network, I can't go out, or maybe I'm working a full-time job, like there's no way I can make it out to these events or to these conferences or whatever it is, it's like learn to stalk people, because like that'll get you so much further than just sitting back and like waiting for things to come to you. Like use LinkedIn as a resource. You'll notice that people who used to work at this merch company are now working at that merch company. I wonder why. Ask those questions, right? Like and you'll dig up so much cool industry news and knowledge and information. Stalk people on Instagram. Find out who owns this company, find out who owns that company. What do they do? What did they do before they got in this space? All that information is so widely available. Like if you're good at stalking your friends or your ex on social media and stuff, you're going to be great at stalking people online. There's so much information you could find about people, learn who's connected with who works with who. I did a lot of that stalking. Found out, this guy is originally from Atlanta, works with that guy from Atlanta, and that guy from California, and this is how they got started, and that's how they do what they do. And then I plugged myself into that network and I said, "What's up, guys? Like, I'm Russ. I know this and that about you, and like that you do this." And those are some of the most influential people to me now. Those are the people I can, pick up the phone right now and call and say, "Hey, do you have a good person for ads? Because my ad guy just left yesterday and I need a full-time guy for ads." And I'll be set up with an ad guy tomorrow. Like that's really what it takes. And I think like take social media and the power of online and all that stuff to your advantage and stalk the shit out of people, honestly.
And we joke with the stalking, really, it's doing your homework, right? And then when you're reaching out, it's not just, "Hi, I'm Russ, can we talk?" You've done your homework. You can, show up saying, "Hey, I saw that you XYZ," and it's it's just a very smart way to go about it. And that's how we met. You reached out to me just looking for an authentic 30 minutes. Just want to learn what you up to. This is what I'm up to. Let's compare notes. And that
Exactly.
authenticity is critical.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then, when I questioned what we were doing with our merger and or the acquisition of $40 tea, you were the first guy I called.
There you go. So thinking about the future, where's Russ at 30 years old?
Yeah, that's a good question. I I've always been like not like worried, but always thinking about like what the future is. I've always been, I guess, more mature than other people my age, and I don't say that in like like a, I'm not trying to say that in like a cocky way or in like a, people around me are like lower than me. I don't say that at all. I guess what I mean by that is like I've always considered like what the future is more than most people. And it's allowed me to like relate to people older than me a little bit better and to understand like what really comes next. And I know that there's a lot that happens like in your personal life when you get to that age, like people tend to start thinking about family and um just whatever comes with adulthood and even parenthood and like later on in life. Um I've always considered like what's gonna get me there though. And I think like with Disco and doing like what I'm doing, there have been concerns here and there about like, is this gonna get me there? Right? Like, is this gonna get me to the place I wanna be when I'm 30? Um, yeah, it's a good question, and the honest answer is I have no idea. I don't know, and I am taking it day by day, but I do have goals, right? Like I do have goals and aspirations, and I guess that's what I meant by trying to say that I've always been a little bit like more mature, um, or felt that way at least. I guess like I have a lot of goals. I have a lot of aspirations. Like I know I want to work for myself or in a position where I can see the results of my own work. I know I love this space, but I know I'm not attached to it in a way where if I need to pursue a different opportunity, it'll be the worst day of my life. You know what I mean? Like I'm open to opportunities, and I think like that's what makes me so flexible. Like I guess where I am in 30 years is wherever the connections in the network that I build over the next 5 years gets me, really. I think like I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of super genuine and awesome people in this space that have been so fun to work with, and like um whatever I'm able to build over the next 5 years is hopefully what keeps us around. But that doesn't mean that I'm not uh positive or um like driven with Disco and with $40 tea. Like the drive is very much there. Like I definitely am working hard in this space and doing that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it doesn't stop at Disco and $40 tea for me. Like there is more, and I think that like the goal is for there to be a larger portfolio, or maybe even stepping away from one of these businesses and having someone else help run it to go start something new and to go pursue and chase that like satisfaction and fulfillment of seeing the results of the work I put in.
I can't wait to follow along the journey. Lastly, I don't know where I came across this, but I've always found it to be an interesting thought exercise. Usually, people would ask you, what advice would current state Russ give to the 2015 Russ starting Diskko with his friend, right? Um, but someone I heard flipped it and said, what would that Russ at that point in time, what advice um, would that Russ give to your current state? And I've always found that powerful because usually people approach it the other way around. Do you have any thoughts on that of big ambitions, young kid taking on the world? Is there anything that speaks to the reflections you've shared today?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You almost kind of stumped me there because like I'm the same ambitious, driven, like up in the clouds guy. Like I live up in the clouds every day. Like that's, and I don't know if that's a problem or if it's a good thing. Hopefully it ends up being a good thing. But like I'm so up in the clouds all the time and I chase such unrealistic dreams. But at the same time, like you gotta aim high and you'll hit the mark, like you'll hit the target. And I feel like I do that in a more maybe realistic way. So like I guess the advice I would give is, I hope older Russ is still out there doing that and like I don't know, that's just been the way I always was and like I was always a dreamer, like a huge, huge dreamer and I think like I don't know it any other way. Like that's just me and I think like I love dreaming and I love dreaming with others too. Like I love having the opportunity to work along people who are um more knowledgeable than me, maybe in different fields or in different places too, and just like diverse uh backgrounds and diverse knowledge and like that's like, that's just been the most fulfilling thing. So keep
Love
dreaming,
it.
Russ.
Don't change a thing.
Yeah.
Well, I've loved this conversation. I really appreciate you diving into the journey, the reflection. It's a bright future, and couldn't be more proud to have someone like you as the first guest on the Print Profit podcast.
Yeah, Nick, I appreciate it. It's been honestly like really inspiring to watch you build what you've been building over the past year since we've connected. I think that like it also has opened my eyes up to a lot of this industry that like you don't want to think about. You don't want to think about, how to, you don't want to think about the numbers, or at least I don't. And I think like
There's weird people like me who,
yeah, yeah. No, it's been it's been an honor. It's been an honor, and I think that like um a guy like you, there's a lot of success coming your way, a lot of good things coming your way. So I really appreciate it. I'm excited to see what happens with the pod and what happens with Print Profit. I'll be there cheering you on, man.
I appreciate it. Well, rock on, Russ. Thanks again for the time.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.